The World Series is nearly upon us. It's the matchup of the two best teams of the year, or just the two teams that got hot at the right time. Now, we all hope for the greatest series of the year every year when we get to this point in the season, but sometimes it does fall a little bit flat on its face. But every now and then, two teams meet at the end to finish off an 8-month gauntlet with absolute baseball cinema. And today, we're going to be looking back on what I consider to be the greatest World Series ever. Now, in the comments, you can argue for 2001, 2011, 2016, these are all great choices. None of you are wrong, but this is my pick. And today we're going back to 1991 to talk about the Braves and the Twins putting on an absolute display of magic baseball through and through. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the Jolly Olive channel. Let's go. Let's first meet the teams. Emerging from the National League was the Atlanta Braves, and while that isn't shocking to any current baseball fan, back in 1991, this team had been the furthest thing from a perennial contender. They were in the midst of a decade-long playoff drought, losing 90 games or more in 5 of their last 6 seasons. This was not yet the team of the 90s. This was simply the budding seed that was about to bloom into a dynasty. Dating back to a season prior, the image of the team was beginning to take shape. David Justice won National League Rookie of the Year. The team actually traded two-time MVP winner Dale Murphy, moving on from the 1980s. A mid-season firing placed Bobby Cox back in the managerial position 10 years removed from when he last held the position with the Braves. The front office brought in Terry Pendleton, who'd win an MVP in the future, and Deion Sanders to electrify the roster. But it wasn't just additions from free agency, it was stepped-up contributions from their in-house talent too. The team thrived in their starting pitching specifically. John Smoltz continued trending upwards, a key piece moving forward. His season was spectacularly strange this year as he finished the first half with a 2-11 record and a 5.16 ERA, and when it looked like he was headed for serious regression, he closed his final 18 starts of the season with a 12-2 record and 2.63 ERA. Former second-round pick Tom Glavine, in his age 24 season just like Smoltz, put together a career-best campaign, taking home the National League Cy Young Award after never receiving a single vote in his career prior. Former number 3 overall pick Steve Avery got some votes too, as the lefty tossed over 200 innings in his age 21 year. The club was 39-40 at the half, in third place and 9.5 games back of the division lead in the National League West. You know, Georgia, the state in the West, right guys? But the Braves surged in the final 2 months of the season, winning 21 of their final 29 games to leapfrog the sputtering Dodgers in the final week of the season. They clinched a spot in the postseason for the first time in 10 years, and along the way, their starting rotation led Major League Baseball in strikeout to walk rate, batting average against, and whip. Their NLCS matchup with the Pittsburgh Pirates was a duel of pitching staffs, with 3 separate games finishing 1-0 at a final score, a team getting shut out in 4 of the 7 games, and one side scoring more than 5 runs just once in the entire 7-game set. The Braves fell down 3-2 in the set before heading to Pittsburgh. Glavine, Smoltz, Avery, and Charlie Leibrandt combined to pitch over 50 innings in this series with a 1.55 ERA, as the pitching staff held Pittsburgh to just 1 run in their final 3 games combined. Bear in mind, Pittsburgh ranked number 1 in the National League overall for runs scored, batting average, on-base rate, and OPS in this 1991 season. This was a seismic feat by the Braves staff. All of a sudden, an Atlanta team with no identity for the past 10 years had miraculously gone from worst to first in a year's time and conquered the Pirates on the cusp of their first World Series victory in 44 years to that point. So who was going to face them in the end? The Minnesota Twins, who were a whole different story at this point. They had very recently gotten over the hump themselves, snapping a 60-year World Series drought with their 1987 victory, when they became the only team in MLB history to register a negative run differential and go on to win the Fall Classic. They had yet to return to the playoffs since, trending downward in 3 seasons since reaching the highest heights. While there were constants from the 1987 squad like manager Tom Kelly, star outfielder Kirby Puckett, and first baseman Kent Hrbek, among others, series change was needed. This was a Twins team that, like the Braves, finished in last place in their division in 1990. First off, the team took massive swings in free agency, signing arguably the best bat and the best arm available. They brought in Chili Davis as their designated hitter, and he promptly smacked 29 home runs with a 141 OPS plus in his first season in the Twin Cities. They pried Hall of Fame ace Jack Morris away from the Detroit Tigers on a one-year, $3.7 million deal to spearhead the rotation. 1 year, $3.7 million. You know, I'd like to see a team just offer this to Shohei Ohtani just to see what happens. Can you imagine if he accepted it? The entire sport would just break. Morris complimented starters Kevin Tapani and David West, as well as new closer Rick Aguilera, all of whom were acquired from the New York Mets in a trade for their former ace, Frank Viola. Aguilera, the best reliever on the team, pitched 11 seasons for Minnesota, racking up over 250 saves as one of the best closers in Twins history. Viola was great for the Mets, but this is sneakily one of the best trades in Minnesota's history, flipping him at the perfect time. While the Twins pulled talent from free agency and trades, they relied on in-house talent just as much as Atlanta did. Starting pitcher Scott Erickson won 20 games and tossed over 200 innings, finishing runner-up in Cy Young voting in his first full season. He was one of 3 Twin starters to finish in the top 7 alongside Morris and Tapani. Former first-round pick Chuck Knobloch got the call for everyday playing time at second base and shockingly won American League Rookie of the Year, walking more times than he struck out and stealing 25 bases with superb defense. The 1991 Twins were a formidable unit, far and away more impressive than the miraculous team that won it all 4 years prior. The team was dormant through the first 2 months of the year before ripping off 24 wins in 27 games to go from 7.5 games back of the division to 4.5 games up. They never left first place for the rest of the season, clinching in mid-September and closing the season with an 8-game lead. Unlike the Braves' venture to the World Series, the ALCS was a lopsided affair in Minnesota's favor. They won 2 of the first 3 games, both by just 1 run, thanks to some clutch work out of their bullpen, then scored 17 runs in the final 2 wins to wrap up the series in 5 games. While the starters got roughed up a bit, the bullpen combined to pitch 18 1/3 scoreless innings.
One thing's certain about the Minnesota Twins, win or lose, they're one loose bunch of cool customers.
Finally, with all the groundwork set, the Fall Classic is upon us. A rejuvenated juggernaut Twins squad played host to a scrappy underdog Braves team playing with virtually nothing to lose. They were the first teams in both of their respective leagues to finish in last place and then win the pennant in the following season. It was a miracle ride for both teams, a triumph for both front offices, and a clash of 2 squads that both seemed destined to win it all. Game 1 saw an immediate advantage in Minnesota's favor in various ways. Winning the ALCS in 5 games allowed them to reset their rotation and give the ball to ace Jack Morris, setting him up to pitch 3 times if necessary if the series were to go to a full 7 games. The Braves, meanwhile, had to burn Glavine, Avery, and Smoltz in their final 3 games just to keep their season alive, and while those guys pitched amazingly, the ball was handed to number 4 guy Charlie Lebrun in their first matchup in the World Series. Fully rested, the Twins offense got runners on in each of the first 5 innings, opening up a 4-0 lead on this Greg Gagne 3-run homer. The lead could have been extended to 5 on this would-be sacrifice fly, if not for a terrific throw from Brian Hunter, followed by the strength of catcher Greg Olson, not that one, to hang on to the ball after a circus-level collision where Dan Gladden ran him so hard he ended up in a headstand, sticking the landing in acrobatic fashion. Catchers, just a reminder to send a thank you note to Buster Posey. With Lebrun knocked out of the game, Morris cruised through 7 innings of 2-run ball, then passed the ball to the Twins bullpen, who remained flawless with 2 more scoreless frames. First baseman Kent Herbeck got off the schneid and clubbed his first home run of the playoffs to put the exclamation point on a 5-2 victory at home. Herbeck is on a list of fantastic lifetime Minnesota players, spending all 14 years of his career with the Twins with nearly 300 home runs, over 1,000 RBIs, and a career 128 OPS plus. He remains second on their all-time home run list still. Game 2 was seemingly a must-win for the Braves, who were struggling offensively with just 9 runs in their past 5 playoff games. Desperate to get a win before heading back home, ace Tom Glavine got the ball, still searching for his first postseason win of his career. This wasn't truly at the fault of Glavine, who had gotten just 1 run of support through his 2 starts. An immediate error to leadoff hitter Dan Gladden extended the inning for the Twins, and Chili Davis made Glavine and company pay right off the bat with this 2-run homer in the first inning. The Braves got a run back in the second inning, but the game quickly evolved into a pitcher's duel. Glavine faced the minimum through his next 5 innings to keep it a 1-run game, but opposing starter Kevin Tapani stepped up, dealing 8 innings of 2-run ball. He was certainly helped by this play in the 3rd inning when Ron Gant singled to set up runners on the corners with 2 outs, only to get blatantly thrusted off first base by Herbeck and subsequently called out. Seriously, I don't know how this call was made at the World Series of all places. If Twitter was around back then, it would have been endlessly debated. With the game knotted at 2 runs apiece, Glavine pitched into the 8th inning as well, but was taken deep once again, this time by rookie Scott Leyes. Up until Royce Lewis this year, Leyes was the only rookie in franchise history to hit a home run in the playoffs. Saying Leyes and Lewis back-to-back is harder than it sounds. Try it 5 times really fast. The Twins bullpen continued their stretch of dominance as Rick Aguilera nailed down a nail-biter save to secure a 2-0 series lead for the Twins. For Glavine, he got credit for a complete game and a loss, now with an 0-3 playoff record despite a 2.45 ERA in 22 innings. The Twins had now won 5 playoff games in a row, outscoring their opponents by 14 runs and never allowing more than 5 runs in any game of the postseason thus far. The series turned back over to Atlanta as the Braves faced a do-or-die Game 3, knowing that falling into a 3-0 deficit would almost certainly mean that they were going to lose the series. The Twins sent their Cy Young runner-up Scott Erickson to the bump. With things seemingly dire for Atlanta, they at least had Avery pitching this vital game, a guy who had so far logged 16 1/3 scoreless innings, winning a pair of 1-0 games against the Pirates in the NLCS that essentially saved Atlanta's season. When you think of the Braves teams of the 90s, you think of Smoltz, Maddox, and Glavine, but rarely do you remember guys like Steve Avery, who was really good for them at the beginning of the decade. But as Murphy's Law dictates, anything that can baseball will baseball. That's a direct quote. The Twins got the jump on Avery immediately with a leadoff triple and sacrifice fly in the first 2 batters. Minnesota had yet to trail at any point in this series and looked to keep that streak intact. Erickson and Avery traded zeros up until the Braves' dormant lineup finally woke up with this thunderous solo home run from David Justice. This opened up the floodgates a bit for Atlanta, who rallied again in the 5th inning with this Lonnie Smith solo home run and then a messy bases-loaded walk to suddenly open up a 4-1 lead. Avery settled in after that shaky first inning, going 7 innings strong with the only other blemish being this Kirby Puckett solo home run. The Braves bullpen were finally faced with a big moment, and while their rotation soaked up the stardom in the ensuing years of the 90s, their bullpen always remained a weakness of sorts. They showed that weakness in this must-win game, as Alejandro Pena immediately coughed up the lead with a bloop and then a Chili Davis blast, a 2-run homer to tie the game 4-4. He escaped further damage, but Atlanta now saw themselves stuck doing the Twins in a bullpen contest, with Minnesota's relievers yet to give up a run in the entirety of the postseason thus far. The game would soon push into extras. Steve Bedrosian, Carl Willis, and Mark Guthrie tossed 6 scoreless innings with just 1 hit allowed through the 11th inning for the Twins. But Atlanta held their own, albeit with a few more scares along the way, as Pena settled in for another inning before passing the baton to Mike Stanton, not that one, for 2 more scoreless frames. With Atlanta possibly finding momentum, Minnesota dealt them a tough pill by bringing in Rick Aguilera, the head of the monster in the bullpen. He quickly got 2 outs before David Justice singled, then stole second base to set up a potential game-winning hit. Finally, as the game crossed the 4-hour mark, the Braves got the big hit they had been seeking all week thanks to Mark Lemke.
Lemke hits it into left field. Here comes Justice. Save! And Atlanta wins it.
His walk-off RBI single gave the Braves an essential win, giving an Atlanta team that was desperate to produce any offense whatsoever the chance to tie the series in Game 4. This led us to by far the best pitching matchup of the series so far, with ace Jack Morris returning to the bump seeking his 4th win in as many starts, dueling it out with John Smoltz, who was coming off a complete game shutout to win Game 7 of the championship series. I know hearing the words playoffs and John Smoltz has really negative connotation nowadays, but back then, it was pure baseball artwork. Morris dealt again, this time with 6 innings of 1-run ball, while Smoltz allowed just those 2 runs through 7 innings of work. The Braves were once again stuck in a battle of bullpens and a tie score once again late in the game. A day after giving them 6 outs, young Mike Stanton, still not that one, gave Atlanta 5 more outs, running up his tally in the playoffs to 8 1/3 innings of 1-run ball. In the 9th, Lemke was a hero again, delivering a massive 1-out triple, and this time Jerry Willard got to play hero with this walk-off sacrifice fly. Against all odds, Atlanta notched back-to-back walk-off wins in 1-run games to tie the series at 2 wins apiece. For all the sports fans out there that say momentum isn't a real thing and that every game can't be quantified to a nuanced scientific explanation and that no team can become an unstoppable force because of past events, I tell you, shh, you're wrong. The Braves had momentum on their side, and with one last game in Atlanta for the series, they showed out. The offense exploded for 14 runs in Game 5 against Kevin Tapani and the now human Minnesota Twins bullpen. Justice, Smith, and Brian Hunter all homered, 8 of their 9 position players notched multiple hits, and the once winless Tom Glavine delivered a good enough start to navigate a breezy 14-5 win. After leaving their home crowd with a confident 2-0 series lead, the Minnesota Twins suddenly found themselves a loss away from the season being over. Worse yet, to even get to a Game 7 scenario, the Twins would have to fight through Game 6 without their number 1 or number 2 starter. They instead sent Scott Erickson to the bump, who had a great regular season but had yet to finish 5 innings in either of his playoff starts. On the other side, Steve Avery, who had arguably been the best pitcher for the Braves this playoffs, looked to finish the series. The Twins, however, got the jump on Avery early once again, doubling his earned run total with 2 runs in the first inning. Erickson cruised through 4 innings, but things could have certainly been worse with Ron Gant crushing this pitch in the 3rd inning. What looked like a surefire game-tying home run was instead turned to an all-time highlight reel catch by Kirby Puckett. And this mutant throwback to first base nearly got the double play too. More on him later. Terry Pendleton erased their lead in the 5th inning with this crowd-silencing 2-run blast. Pendleton went 8 for 13 with 2 home runs in games 4 through 6 after hitting just 167 in the first 10 games of the playoffs. In the end, Avery and Erickson both dealt identical outings, with each going 6 innings with 3 runs allowed. The Braves turned once again to Mike Stanton. Guys, it's not that one, stop asking. And he delivered again with 2 more scoreless frames. Carl Willis of the Twins redeemed his poor performance in Game 5 with 2 2/3 scoreless innings on their side. As the game pushed into extra innings, Alejandro Pena and Rick Aguilera both went 6 up, 6 down to push the action to the 11th. In a move still questioned by Braves fans to this day, Bobby Cox opted to use Charlie Lebrand in extras, seeing that he wouldn't be starting another game in the series. Stepping up to the plate as his first batter was the face of the franchise to that point, Kirby Puckett. He had been scorching hot, hitting .349 with 6 extra base hits and 10 RBIs through 11 games to that point. He was the most prominent carryover from the 1987 squad and another Minnesota Twins lifer. This dude was a special player and certainly would have been a Hall of Famer if not for his career getting abruptly ended by glaucoma. Seriously, if you haven't visited this guy's baseball reference page or if you've never heard of him before, go check it out right now. Pause the video, check it out, and then come back. Puckett was a 10-time All-Star, 6-time Gold Glover and Silver Slugger, a career .318 batter, a couple 2020 seasons under his belt, and a guy that certainly should have been an MVP winner at some point in his career. But right now, this moment is not about everything he accomplished prior. It is instead about the prelude to the most iconic moment of his entire dozen-year career. In a 2-1 count, Lebrand left one right where Puckett liked it, and Kirby deposited it into a roaring left field crowd.
Into deep left center from Mitchell, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
The Twins go to the 7th game. Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett.
The Twins seized the walk-off magic from their opponents for a vital 4-3 victory to force Game 7, as the Metrodome nearly had its roof pop off. While the celebration ensued, Game 7 was nearly upon us, and fans were treated to a rematch of the Game 4 matchup, as John Smoltz and Jack Morris towed the rubber on short rest, pitching in the most important game of both of their careers. What you're about to witness is arguably the greatest pitching duel in the history of recorded baseball, no hyperbole. For the Twins, Jack Morris was the right guy for the job. He was the winningest pitcher of the 1980s, he had already won a World Series title with Detroit, and would go on to win another with Toronto the next season. He tossed a no-hitter, logged over 230 innings 11 times in his career, and though he'd never get that elusive Cy Young award, he was looking to add one more accolade to his Hall of Fame career resume, a World Series MVP award. For the Braves, John Smoltz was pitching against his childhood idol, the Michigan kid, a Tigers fan at heart, who watched Jack Morris help his favorite team win a fall classic. Now he was trying to beat him on the grandest stage possible, and while he and Morris walked the tightrope at certain points, it was clear that neither one was letting a run across home plate if their life depended on it. The Twins got 2 on in the 2nd inning. No runs scored. Then the Braves did so in the 3rd inning. No runs scored. Runners in scoring position in the 3rd inning for the Twins, then in the 4th and 5th inning for the Braves. No runs scored. Through 7 innings, Morris and Smoltz stymied the opposing offenses. Finally, in the top of the 8th inning with the top of the order batting, it seemed as though Atlanta would finally strike first. Lonnie Smith singled on a check swing, and then Terry Pendleton opened the scoring with a double deep in the gap. Except, Smith didn't score. A deke by second baseman Chuck Knobloch held Lonnie up as he lost sight of the ball, causing him to stop short when he reached third base, and he failed to score. This blunder might have just cost the Braves everything. An intentional walk to David Justice set up this magnificent 3-2-3 double play, ending a bases-loaded threat for Atlanta. In the bottom of the 8th inning, Smoltz was finally yanked from the game much to his own dismay, but in their own bases-loaded one-out threat, the Twins lineup met a similar fate with an ill-timed double play lineout. Against all odds, this contest was heading to the 9th inning knotted at 0, and with no runs across, old man Jack Morris came out for another frame. He sat down the Braves 1-2-3, punching out Mark Lemke to guarantee either a Twins win or extra innings. It would be the latter, as the Twins once again squandered a pair of hits against Mike Stanton and Alejandro Pena. As the Atlanta lineup prepared to face Rick Aguilera once again in a high-intensity spot, you can only imagine their shock and the fan shock when Jack Morris emerged from the dugout once again, vying for his 10th inning of scoreless work on the night. Unbelievably, he notched another 1-2-3 inning, his 4th in the last 5 innings of work, 10 shutout innings of work in one game. It cannot be possibly overstated how special of an outing this truly was. It hadn't been done in the playoffs since 1986, where Doc Gooden did so in Game 5 of the NLCS. Only 2 other men, Joe Niekro and Bob Gibson, did so in the playoffs without allowing a run. But nobody in the history of the game has ever done it in a must-win Game 7 of the World Series. And it's been over 30 years since this game. We can confidently say this is never going to happen again. All he needed now was the win, and all the Twins had to do was put up one measly run. Dan Gladden blooped a hustle double, then got to third base on a bunt. The Braves wisely decided to walk Puckett and Herbeck, hoping for another miraculous double play to keep their season alive. But at long last, their magic finally ran out. Gene Larkin took the most important swing in Twins franchise history.
The Twins are going to win the World Series. The Twins have won it.
In 10 innings, the Minnesota Twins eked out a 1-0 walk-off victory to win the World Series. On one side, pure elation with a roaring crowd behind them. On the other, pure despair, not knowing if they'd ever get as close as they were to hauling a World Series trophy. Little did both of these teams know how different the ensuing years would unfold for them. The Braves evolving into a postseason juggernaut and the team of the 90s. The Twins tumbling into playoff mediocrity, a stretch that lasted for decades until this very season 30 years later. To this day, I'm not sure that the play in this World Series has been outclassed by any set that followed it. 4 games were won in the final at-bat of the game. 5 games were decided by just 1 run. 3 games went into extra innings. There were Hall of Fame aces featured in length. Kirby Puckett nearly single-handedly won a game by himself. If you've watched this far and you experienced the theater of this series for the first time, I envy you. If you were here just to relive it one more time, welcome to the club. But either way, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.